Director of the Public Library. The University of the West Indies monocampus librarian, national librarians from across the region, past and present students of the Barbados Community College, specially invited guests and friends. Once again, good afternoon and welcome. There is one important person who is missing from our gathering today, General Manager of the UE Press, Dr. Joseph Powell, who died unexpectedly earlier this week. Dr. Powell took up his assignment at the press on the 1st of August, 2016. His sudden passing has come as a shock to his colleagues and friends. May I ask that we observe a minute's silence in acknowledgement of Dr. Powell's passing and to honor his memory. Thank you very much. We are thinking of Dr. Powell's family at this difficult time and trust that they will find comfort. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin our program by inviting the Reverend Trevor O'Neill, who is rector of St. Philip's Parish Church in Barbados, to give the invocation. Reverend O'Neill.
A blessed and pleasant good afternoon to all present at this book launch. Let us pray. The scriptures tell us that whatever we do, we work at it with all our heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. So with this evening exercise, we offer this work unto God. I pray that He will accept our praise and thanks for all that He has done for us. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the splendor of the whole creation, for the beauty of the world, for the wonder of life and the mystery of your love. We thank you for the blessing of life, family, friends, and for the loving care which surrounds us on every side. We thank you for setting us tasks which demand our very best efforts, and for leading us to accomplishments which satisfy and delight us. We thank you in this work for those institutions that have assisted us in sciences, arts, music, in literature. And this afternoon, we thank you for the Barbados Community College and the great work it has done through the years, and that work that continues even today. We thank you for those who serve this institution and served it well, and would have shared and continue to share their gifts and skills with us for our education, for our development, for our benefit. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for your servant, Professor Vivienne Roberts, for the use of her gifts and talents to share with us this literary work on the Barbados Community College Experience. We thank you for those who work in roles to connect this literary work to readers and all, including the publishers, the publishing staff, book owners, librarians, that they may continue in their goal to ensure that this book reach those who need to hear the message it contains. Help us, Heavenly Father, to use this book as a gift you have given to us that will help shape and fashion our consciousness as we move forward in this global community. Come now and be with us in the person and power of your Holy Spirit, and lead us in this book launch. Guide our thoughts, our words, and our actions, especially of those who are participating. We pray that in all that we do, we will be transpired in your service and your love. Pray that all our activities, our deliberations, will be offered to you in your honor and your glory. So go before us in all our doings, and further us with your continual help, that in all our works begun, continue, they may end in you. And by your great mercy, we will continue in this life you have given us in your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend O'Neill. Thank you. Professor Roberts says of the Barbados Community College, as the first in the region, the BCC has distinguished itself as a pioneer in community college educational leadership in its evolution from an A-level college to an engaged and progressive, comprehensive community institution, and a partner on the world stage with international colleges and universities. So indeed, there is much to celebrate with this publication, which commemorates the 50th anniversary of the college. The book which we are launching this afternoon is a publication of the University of the West Indies Press. Dr. Luce Longsworth is Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UWI Open Campus with responsibility for global affairs. She's also the chair of the board of the University of the West Indies Press, and Dr. Longsworth will bring us greetings on behalf of UE Press. Dr. Longsworth?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all. I know you have done your greetings, but do allow me to greet very specially Dame Perlette Louise, former Governor General of St. Lucia, and herself, a former principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and another one of our outstanding community colleges in the region, the principal of the Barbados Community College, Professor Velma Newton, chair of the BCC, and of course, our amazing author and my friend and colleague, Professor Vivienne Roberts. Today for us, as you've mentioned, Chairman, at the UE Press, this is a moment of mixed emotions for us all. We recognize and honor our recently departed General Manager, Dr. Joseph Powell, who was a part of this book project from the very beginning when we started our conversations with Professor Roberts about the publication. But we know that Joseph would have wanted us to strike a note of celebration as we launch this exciting work by my dear colleague and friend, Professor Emerita Vivienne Roberts. Professor Roberts, to me, exemplifies what Professor Rex Nettleford once said to us, that retirement is really all about. And he said, it's retiring, or putting on new tires to go even further down the road. And I would say that Professor Roberts has certainly put on some high-profile tires, as the young people would say, as she has been so active in publications over the past few years since her retirement from the Open Campus and the UE, and putting out very important work for our region. Indeed, however, the UE Press is particularly pleased that she chose and insisted that this publication reside with us. And we thank her for gifting us with this outstanding work, which is not just a history of the Barbados Community College, but an important contribution to the scholarly work in the region on our tertiary education sector. In fact, too often we fail in our region to document the excellence that we have achieved and that is indigenous to our region in institution building, and the giants who have contributed to this excellence. Many times our current generations of students and even lecturers and faculty are unaware of the important groundbreaking work that our regional educators have done, which are globally innovative and which have provided leadership in tertiary education, as Professor Roberts' book reveals. The UE Press is therefore particularly happy to publish this text, as the press's publication agenda is also driven by the UWI's AAA strategic plan. And we can situate Professor Roberts' book in the first of the A's, which is access to tertiary education. So this publication on the excellence of BCC in providing leadership in the community college environment in the Anglophone Caribbean is one that will add to the knowledge base of educators, especially as education moves into a new phase of development and into new directions in this COVIDized environment. As I close, I wish to once again congratulate our author, Professor Vivienne Roberts, and to also thank posthumously Dr. Powell for his support of this project. I wish to thank the staff of the UE Press for their role in arranging this launch and recognizing that even in this, our moment of mourning, that we are able to continue to support and to make this launch a success. Given all of this, I know that this publication will be much sought after by anyone who is interested in understanding not just the past, but also the future of tertiary education in the region, as exemplified by what occurred with the development of the BCC. This is a very important addition to the UE Press catalog and for educators around the region and indeed the world as we move forward. I thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, audience, for the generosity of your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Longsworth, for your greetings and for the words of encouragement. Professor Roberts dedicated her book to Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, Barbados Community College initiator, founder, leader, recipient of a BCC honorary doctorate, and teacher par excellence. Attorney at law, Mrs. Evadne Brewster Wiltshire, is one of the students who benefited from an education at BCC and from Sir Lloyd's tutelage. She graduated top of his government and politics class of 1981 to 83. When Sir Lloyd became Prime Minister of Barbados in 1987, Mrs. Brewster Wiltshire took over from him and taught the course for 12 years. We now welcome her as she pays tribute to Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be able to pay tribute to one of the most distinguished and accomplished sons of the Barbadian soil. I speak of no other than Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford. Professor Vivienne Roberts, your book is an experience in knowledge and in learning. It took me back to a happy place and a happy time. One of those experiences that in retrospect, you discover how happy you were when you were living the experience. Studying and working at the Barbados Community College was indeed a rewarding and fulfilling experience. At BCC, we were a family. Professor Roberts, I congratulate you on this book. You have given us the chance to reconnect with that happy place, but more importantly, to stay in that happy place. Through your book, you have put BCC into perspective and created a bigger picture for everyone, locally, regionally, and internationally. Sir Lloyd was born and and socialized in a very eventful time in the history of the Caribbean and indeed of the world. It must have been a thought-provoking experience for this young scholar. As I see it, there were two options available to persons at Lloyd. One would have been to choose a safe career and earn a good living, and the other would have been to make a decision to be on the front line and to fight for the advancement of his race, his class, and his nation. We are living testimonies to the path that this great statesman chose. Born in the midst of the Barbados riots in the 1930s, being 8 years old at the end of the Second World War, spending his teenage years at the Coleridge and Parry School and later at the Harrison College, and by age 21, having experienced the achievement of adult suffrage in Barbados and the collapse of the West Indies Federation. Moving on to Mona to pursue a degree and becoming president of the Guild of Undergraduates there. Moving to England when he did to pursue a master's, being a conscious and intelligent Black man. The writing was on the wall. It is no surprise that the footprints which he has left bears testimony to the growth and development of our beloved nation. During the 1960s, sugar was king, and most persons earned a living by doing manual labor on the plantations. Poverty was persistent, as George Beckford explained in his book, So Named. Mechanization only came about in the 1970s, as did industrialization by invitation, a model propounded by Sir Arthur Lewis, which attempted to diversify the plantation economy. It is evident that Caribbean societies were ready for change. Political parties and trade unions were formed, and a novel and the most powerful force emerged, a cadre of intellectuals who were socialized from birth, who were aware of the plight of the working class from whence they came, and who must have felt that they had the ambition, the know-how, and the determination to make that change. Sir Lloyd was one of whom I speak. Sir Lloyd returned to Barbados in 1967, 1 year after independence, and joined the Democratic Labour Party. By 1987, Sir Lloyd had become the 4th Prime Minister of Barbados, and by 2000, he received the highest honor of the Knight of St. Andrew. In April of 2008, the Sherburne Conference Center, which was in fact his idea and brainchild, was renamed after him. In 2000, Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford received an honorary doctorate from the University of the West Indies. In that auspicious ceremony to celebrate his contribution to the University of the West Indies and the wider community, Sir Lloyd was dubbed a statesman, an author, an educator, a diplomat, and a politician. Sir Lloyd had given 32 years of unbroken and devoted service to Parliament and holds the record of the longest serving Minister of Education in Barbados. Sir Lloyd was an advocate of tertiary level education, and his vision was realized with the establishment of the Barbados Community College and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. Sir Lloyd is also known for his commitment to Caribbean integration, as he was heavily involved in both the formation of the Caribbean Examination Council, CXC, and was instrumental in the decision-making process to institute the Caribbean Community and Common Market, CARICOM. The college opened its doors in 1968. Sir Lloyd's vision for the BCC is that it will be more than another 11 institution. His vision was achieved from the inception, as BCC became a technical institute, an institute to prepare students for the world of work, while at the same time catering to the needs of the adults and the youth for continuing education. The great poet Maya Angelou stated, and I quote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Some of you may recall that on February 10th, 2018, we, the former students of Sir Lloyd, hosted a dinner and dance in his honor, and we named it To Serve with Love. This was our way of saying to Sir Lloyd, this is how you made us feel. And as students, this is how we feel about you, our teacher and mentor. BCC was a natural choice for me to continue my tertiary level education. And I was sold on the idea of not having to wear a school uniform and having the choice of pursuing non-traditional subjects. On reflection, I don't know if it was a wise choice, but I did not apply anywhere else. I was elated when I was accepted at BCC and offered a position in the history program and introduced to government and politics as a subject. I did not know anything about politics, but it sounded exciting to me as a teenager. I grew to like it more than I could have imagined, and the experience shaped my life forever. I graduated top of the class and went on to the K-Film to study political science. I also had the wonderful opportunity of returning to teach the subject at the BCC. In her book, Professor Vivienne Roberts referred to Lloyd as a teacher par excellence. I can attest to this as I was a member of the class of 1981 to 1983. Lloyd was serious yet humorous. His class was well structured and organized. And at the end of every 2-hour lecture, we had a chance to participate and to share our opinions on all the ideas that we presented. We had parliamentary debates in class, and we had the opportunity to visit Parliament when it was in session. Lloyd is one of the most disciplined persons that I know, a sentiment which was echoed by his son Garth. As students, we would look over on the driveway at a particular time from the second floor of 201 Commerce on our designated politics days. And like clockwork, Mr. Sandiford, as he was then, would turn up in his Toyota S1025 and park in his usual spot. By the time he reached the class, we were a bunch of quiet angels looking studious, books open and ready to start the class. Had he turned up 5 minutes earlier, he would have seen the noisy bunch of us. He would give us 10 minutes to stretch our legs in between classes, and at the end of the 10 minutes, ready or not, class would resume. Mrs. Sandiford's notes were legendary, well-researched, logical, and well-explained. I was able to use them as a foundation and to add to them for the many years that I taught the course. We learned more than politics in the 6 hours that we spent with Mrs. Sandiford weekly. He had a way of sharing real-life experiences without deviating from the topic at hand. We learned humanity and humility. We learned kindness. The guys learned how to be gentlemen. Carla Graves, Wayne Lowe, Andrew Thornhill, Cedric Murrell, and Colin St. Hill, to name a few. And we, the girls, Lenora Headley, Jacqueline Greenidge, Judy Grant, Regina Earle, and Heather Waterman, to name a few, learned how to be ladies, how to be gentle spirits, but yet how to be assertive. We all learned to work hard to achieve our goals, how to set our goals in the sky, but to keep our feet firmly planted on the ground. Mrs. Sandiford, as you were to us in the 1980s, I thank you for the experience. Like the proverbial potter, you have molded and shaped my life for the better. I hope that in some small way, I was able to positively influence the students whom I had the privilege of teaching. Many of the principles that I've learned from you, just as a teen, have stayed with me throughout the years. I have emulated and mastered some of them, and some of them are still works in progress. I have tried to pass some of them on to my students. So Lloyd, I thank you. Mrs. Sandiford, on behalf of the politics class of 1981 to 1983, I say to you, we can remember what you said to us, and we can remember what you've done for us. But most of all, we can remember how you made us feel. So Lloyd, thank God we still have you. Professor Vivienne Roberts, thank you for this experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
And we thank you, Mrs. Brewster Wiltshire, for the reminiscences of studying under the tutelage of Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford. In addition to a visionary founder, the BCC has been fortunate to have dedicated administrative leaders over the years. Dr. K. Skeet Thompson, a former senior tutor and head of the Division of Commerce at BCC, interacted with several of them. But that's not where the association began. She gained GCE advanced level certificates in French and English literature while a student at the Barbados Community College. Her BCC career between 1998 and 2011 was focused intensely on academic quality assurance and training of trainers in the role of curriculum specialist at BCC. She joined the University of the West Indies in 2013 and is currently head of the KFIL campus office of the Regional Quality Assurance Unit. In her book dedication, Professor Roberts wrote, "To Alvin Barnett, who brought calm to many a storm, Norma Holder, who gave wings to good ideas, Hinkich Bell, who lived and breathed public health, and Peggy Innes, who was the embodiment of service. May they rest in peace." Dr. Skeet Thompson is here to offer her own remembrances of Alvin Barnett, Norma Holder, Pinkich Bell, and Peggy Innes. Dr. Skeet Thompson.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to present brief tributes to 4 of BCC's stalwarts in the trailblazing journey that the BCC undertook in the region. It is but a brief snapshot, and you know what I'm going to say, read Vivienne Roberts' book. Remembering Alvin Barnett. Known initially in education circles as a scientist and former physics teacher at Harrison's College, Alvin Barnett joined the BCC and became the senior tutor in the Division of Sciences, Natural Sciences. Soon thereafter, the college was negotiating and discussing with the Ministry of Health the establishment of a Health Sciences Division. Mr. Barnett led that charge on behalf of the college and therefore undertook to head the Division of Health Sciences at its inception, along with his substantive post. Better than I ever could, Vivienne Roberts recognizes Mr. Barnett's far-reaching contribution to the college. She refers to it as a period of growth and consolidation, and with good reason, because those of you who have read the book and those who know a bit of BCC's history would know that Mr. Barnett led many amazing achievements at the BCC. High among these for Barbados and the region was the establishment of the associate degree. This coming on the heels of a conceptualization by the Honorable Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, with historically noted insights from the now Angelita Lady Sandiford. We do agree. Mr. Barnett was just what the doctor ordered for the fledgling college, an institution rooted in controversy, strong in pedagogy, and with the potential to put the community in education as a community college. This included some very insightful initiatives such as establishing advisory committees, especially for technical and applied programs. I knew Mr. Barnett first when I was a student and class rep in the Division of Liberal Arts, and he left a lasting positive impression on many of us. Mr. Barnett was the epitome of calm, cool resolve and provided students with a study in handling conflict, respecting other individuals, maintaining confidentiality. His temperament seemed to combine the best of that scientific cool with that humanities, observation, and reflection. Mr. Barnett allowed me to grasp even more fully the strength of his measured approach, and as I have matured, this has become even more evident. His contribution to the development of the BCC is indeed invaluable. Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Mrs. Norma Holder. I must repeat, read Vivienne's book. When those of my generation of teachers think of our early days as employees and part of the BCC family, Norma Holder stands out for us as representing stability, pride in our profession as educators, and solidifying the early BCC brand in the eyes of the public. In temperament, there seem to be many similarities between Mr. Barnett and Mrs. Holder, both scientists. They exuded a calm confidence that belied the turbulence that existed in the early days of BCC's establishment. Altogether, Mrs. Holder spent 35 years at the BCC. She had the distinction of being one of the first members of the teaching staff and the first female principal. She served for 13 years. I experienced Mrs. Holder's leadership firsthand. I remember her providing opportunities and facilitating the development of leadership capacity among staff. She took a very personal interest in ensuring that the BCC was a pioneer in higher education quality. As far back as 1998, with the establishment of a dedicated curriculum development function. That was unheard of in Barbados. Whether one agreed with the decision, one always had the impression that Mrs. Holder acted in good faith based on the best evidence presented at the time and using her best judgment. If anyone wanted to rile her up, they just needed to speak an untruth about her college, and they would see the response she would give, but always gracious. During Mrs. Holder's tenure, she was astute, visionary, sophisticated, and never lacked the common touch. Her contribution to the college was invaluable and is much deserving of being highlighted. Read Professor Roberts' enthralling account for the whole story. Remembering Hinchgate Bell. Mr. Bell, as enigmatic as his first name, joined the Division of Health Sciences in 1974. He was recruited to the fledgling division as a public health instructor and with his colleagues developed a pioneering program to train public health inspectors. This characterization is but a tip of the iceberg for a man whose sterling contribution to Barbados and the region was recognized and celebrated widely. Indeed, in the 1985-86 Health Sciences Yearbook, the Division of Health Sciences celebrated Mr. Bell's 50 years in public health. Mr. Bell was instrumental in establishing the Foundation for Environmental Health Studies and will be remembered for his boldness, inclusiveness, incisiveness, ingenuity, and pride in his profession. He was part of the serious fight for job security within the Health Inspectorate and an important part of the push for continuous professional development within his field. I remember him as a decisive, reflective, frank, wise individual. He was sometimes humorously and deliberately, yes, deliberately, crusty. Above all, Mr. Bell was a gentleman. I met him when I joined the BCC as a temporary assistant lecturer, tutor 2 as the BCC refers to it, in 1985, substituting in the Division of Health Sciences. I was fresh from university, directly out of college, from high school, with limited work experience. Mr. Bell was a source of very pragmatic guidance about teaching and never hesitated to explain his views, including the reasons why his views differed very often from other people's views, and he was fearless and honest in his descriptions. Within the field of public health, Mr. Bell was relied on to advise about policy and to conceptualize and implement groundbreaking innovations. Whether in the trenches in the fight against swine flu in the late 1930s, or running a successful schools program against the housefly, a disease vector. The BCC had the benefit of this vast store of experience, commitment, and energy. Well done, Mr. Bell, and thank you. Remembering Peggy Innes. I came to know Mrs. Innes during my tenure as tutor 2 at BCC. Mrs. Innes had been the principal tutor prior to the secondment of nurses from the Centenary School of Nursing in the Ministry of Health in April 1986. I remember Mrs. Innes in the Division of Health Sciences as very dignified, astute, gentle in manner, and strong in resolve. Her pride in her profession was unquestioned and unquestionable. It was clear she was skilled in handling trauma and other challenges in her profession, but she always displayed a calm confidence and competence that belied the excitement churning around her. As a colleague, Mrs. Innes was highly reflective and believed firmly that the association with the BCC would help further highlight the invaluable ways that nursing education could grow and flourish. In those early days, as you could imagine, not everyone saw the move to the BCC as a positive move for nursing. However, leading from the front, Peggy was highly optimistic and full of determination to approach the transition systematically and collaboratively, focused more on the great store of opportunities, but still paying careful attention to any challenges that needed to be addressed. In her book, Roberts notes that with the addition of the nursing portfolio, the college gained a 3-year general nursing certificate, a 1-year day release nursing assistant certificate, and a 1-year post-basic midwifery certificate. The years were not without challenges. A formerly reasonably autonomous school was now under the aegis of a college and the college's regulatory framework. Nursing as a specialization had to be understood and valued within this new structure if its work was to continue as seamlessly as possible and improve continuously. To me, this was Peggy's significant role as she navigated this new territory conscientiously and astutely, learning and growing through every challenge, taking it on as her life's mission. A valuable contribution indeed. Thank you very much, Mrs. Innes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Skeet Thompson, for those warm remembrances of the 4 BCC stalwarts. May they rest in peace. I've been advised that we have in our audience Professor Hazel Simmons MacDonald, the former principal of the UWI Open Campus, and Professor Glenn Jones of the University of Toronto. We welcome them. Professor Velma Newton is a historian, librarian, and attorney at law. She was the first Deputy Executive Director of the Caribbean Law Institute Center, Faculty of Law at the UWI from 1989 to 1994. She's also a former law librarian and dean of the Faculty of Law. She retired from the latter post and became regional director of the Impact Justice Project. Since 2018, Professor Newton has served as chair of the board of the Barbados Community College. She brings greetings now on behalf of the board. Professor Newton.
Dame Perlette Louise, former Governor General of St. Lucia and former principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. Sir Lloyd Sandiford, former Prime Minister of Barbados and Minister of Education, whose brainchild was the Barbados Community College, and Lady Sandiford, a former Deputy Principal of the college. Dr. Luce Longsworth, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Principal of the Open Campus UE, and also Chair of the University Press. Vivienne Roberts, Professor Emerita and author of the book. Mrs. Evadne Brewster Wiltshire, Member of the Board of Management of the Barbados Community College. Other distinguished speakers, Master of Ceremonies, or Mistress of Ceremonies rather, Dr. Sharon Marshall. Dr. Pamela Dottin, Member of the Board of Management of the Barbados Community College. Ms. Janet Arlene, Principal of the Barbados Community College, former and present staff of the BCC, including Anne Lady Hewitt and Esther Phillips, who is now the Poet Laureate of Barbados. A pleasant good afternoon to you all. On behalf of the Board of Management of the Barbados Community College, I am extending our heartiest congratulations and gratitude to Professor Emerita Vivienne Roberts for researching and writing this book, the Barbados Community College Experience, leading Anglophone Caribbean in a global movement. This is the first comprehensive work on the history of the college, which, commencing in January 1969, was also the first community college to be established in the English-speaking Caribbean. This meticulously researched work begins with a review of a community college in the global context and in the Caribbean, and then in the remaining 7 chapters moves to the Barbados Community College. We are informed that the founder of the college, now Sir Lloyd Sandiford, but then the Minister of Education in Barbados, saw the college as having the dual function of offering post-secondary education courses, which would enable students to qualify for entry to the university, and as a means of addressing manpower development for the workplace in Barbados. We are also informed that the college started with 3 divisions and 300 students in 1969, and moved to 6 divisions during the 1970s, and from preparing students, most of whom would not otherwise have had the opportunity for A levels in various subjects, to offering associate degrees from 1987 and bachelor's degrees from 1996. We're also told how the Hospitality Institute, established in 1964 to provide training for persons in the hotel industry, was transferred to the community college as its division of hospitality studies in 1980. How the general education studies program, now the largest in the college, offered courses in any area you can think of, offering courses in any area that you can think of that would be useful in a modern and developing society, started in 1979 with when assistant tutor Ann Hewitt introduced and coordinated general education enrichment courses for students. Not only did the college expand its programs, but it established ties in the form of memoranda of understanding with the UWI Cayfield campus, Eardiston Teachers Training College, and the Samuel Jackman Polytechnic at home and abroad, with a number of colleges and institutions and universities, which led to student exchanges and initiatives of benefit to both institutions. Professor Roberts also points to the fact that despite many earlier criticisms, by the mid-1980s, the college was being seen as a tertiary level institution and not as a school. And she notes that the small fees, part-time and full-time offerings to provide students of all ages with second chances at education, use of the facilities by community members, and the interface between work and school all reflect community college values. Looking back, Barbados owes Sir Lloyd a tremendous debt of gratitude for his courage in spearheading the establishment of a college at a time when few knew anything about the concept of the community college, and to the staff of the college who have made it work from the beginning. Today, there are few Barbadian households that have not had students who attend the Barbados Community College. With an enrollment usually over 3,000 annually, and producing Barbados scholars and exhibition winners over the years, and other graduates who are performing successfully both in the private and public sector in Barbados and elsewhere, with well-established and well-known music and fine arts and other programs, the BCC has much to be proud of and to be thankful for. Professor Roberts, educator, poet, now historian, and a fine one at that, we thank you for this remarkable contribution to the understanding of the institution, which for many years was the proverbial wind beneath your wings. And we look forward to other publications from you of the same standard. Our hope is that as many BCC staff and students as possible will purchase copies of this book to learn more about in the institution that has helped shape their lives. It will certainly become an important tool for the Board of Management. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Newton. The Barbados Community College offers an associate degree in music. Since the inception of the music program, the college has graduated a cadre of musicians who are making their mark in Barbados and abroad. We will now be treated to a performance by a graduate of the program. Kelly Cadogan has associate degrees in music and in theater arts. She's also a music tutor at BCC. Kelly is going to perform a selection which she wrote entitled In Awe of You. The musicians on the project are Lowry Worrell, a music graduate and tutor, Dwayne Gill, music graduate, and Roger Gittings, head of the Performing Arts Department. Some of the video was recorded by Joel Brooks, who is a visual arts graduate, and it was mixed by Simon Victor, another music graduate. Ladies and gentlemen, Kelly Cadogan with In All of You.
Lord, I stand in awe of you. Everything you say and do, though I may not understand, I know you have the perfect plan. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Everything I'm going through is cycles and the seasons turn. I humble myself, seek to learn. I stand in awe, in awe, in awe of you. I stand in awe, in awe, in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Your word is perfect, love and true. Once I apply it every day, I believe that I will find my way. Lord, I stand in awe of you. The breath I take, I know it's you. With gratitude poured out of me, I live out my purpose and be free. I stand in awe, in awe, in awe of you. I stand in awe, in awe, in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe, in awe, in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe of you. Lord, I stand in awe. I stand in awe of you.
Thank you so much, Kelly Cadogan. We are in awe of you. Wonderful talent. I'm sure you agree with me. Dame Perlette Louisy, former Governor General of St. Lucia and former principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, has spent a lifetime in the field of education. She has reviewed the publication which we are launching today and will share some comments about it at this point in the program. Please welcome Dame Perlette Louisy.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you, Madam Chair. Professor Roberts has asked me to review this publication, and I seem to think that I'm perhaps the only non-national on today's program, so I hope I can do some justice to this afternoon's proceedings. In any sphere of endeavor, 50 years is a significant milestone, one that is observed and celebrated the world over. In a region not quite accustomed to telling its own story, our story, this golden tribute to one of our homegrown successes is to be applauded, supported, and emulated. In 1969, the Barbados Community College opened its doors to the Barbadian community to cater to the island's growing social demand for post-secondary education. That demand was not unique to Barbados by any means. Indeed, in 1988, 20 years after the establishment of the college, one of the region's eminent educators, Professor Compton Bourne, comparing the region's education sector to a pyramid with the primary and secondary sector as the base and the university sector at the apex, had lamented the slimness of the middle segment and called for that segment to be expanded. The Barbados Community College fitted the bill perfectly. In this publication under review, Professor Emerita Vivienne Roberts tells the story of an idea that took root in advance of its time in the mind of one educator, and we have heard who he is. An idea which initially was a little embraced or understood by leaders, by some educators even, or by the general public. It is a story of patience and persistence, a lesson in creatively moving with ideas ahead of resources. As Professor Roberts herself puts it, it was like riding a cow in the absence of a horse. That story is an adventure in finding niches and gaps between the cracks and opening up opportunities for the underserved. It was an exercise in making haste slowly, as a former principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College described the slow progress of his own institution. Professor Emerita Roberts takes us on a compelling 5-decade journey from the genesis of the college amid strong political opposition, significant industrial unrest, and skepticism by some members of the public, to its expansion phase, characterized by long waits on pending staff appointments to promised positions, and delayed refurbishments of deteriorating buildings. She takes us to its years of growth and consolidation, described as transformational and impactful, not only locally, but also regionally in providing leadership to emerging community colleges. She speaks of its outreach and reputation building stage as it relentlessly blazed a trail that would take the college from a 2-year institution in which the highest level of offerings was the same as that of the sixth form schools, to an institution which in the 27th year of its existence was conferring its own bachelor's degrees. The establishment of the college is portrayed as not only evolutionary, in that it was a natural process of development or maturity, but to some extent revolutionary, if we are to judge by the tensions that were played out between the leaders and visionaries who, as Vivienne says, risk riding the cow in the absence of the horse on the one hand, critics, detractors, and naysayers on the other. The tensions between those on the one hand who felt threatened by the perceived loss of their status, and on the other hand, the beneficiaries of the opportunities that this institution afforded them. The Barbados Community College offers an interesting insight. The Barbados Community College Experience offers a fascinating insight into ways opportunities can be lost or missed when people give in to emotion rather than to reason. Given the 2020 vision that hindsight affords, the college proudly claims the pioneer role that it has played in the development of the community college model in the Anglophone Caribbean. But Barbados and the region would have been the poorer had the Minister of Education of the day, now Sir Lloyd Erskine Santiford, given in to the pressures and criticisms and allowed the idea to be snuffed out even before it was given a chance to be birthed. Instead, what the region has gained is the establishment of multiple models of tertiary education provision in more than 20 national institutions, opening up access to thousands over the past 50 years. Chapter 5 of Roberts' publication is devoted entirely to these national institutions, a courtesy that must be gratefully acknowledged. The hope is that nationals of each of these institutions will follow Professor Roberts' lead and tell their story. From the thumbnail portraits that she has painted, we are not all surprised, not at all surprised, that in each case, from the establishment of the BCC in 1968 to the establishment of the Anguilla Community College in 2009, these institutions have thought globally, networked regionally, and acted locally. We have benefited, yes, from global educational borrowing, but they have customized their forms and functions based on local realities. It really was a case of something old, something borrowed, something new. It was another Caribbean educator, Professor Errol Miller, who advised policymakers in the region not to be too parochial and insular in their development strategies, or as Sir Arthur Lewis once put it, not to clothe ourselves in a coat of West Indianness, but to adopt a global perspective while operating at the local level. We are not surprised, therefore, that Professor Roberts has devoted 3 chapters of her publication to the global community college concept and counterparts to situate the emergence of the Caribbean's own homegrown model. However, while she acknowledges the benefits of global partnerships, agendas, and targets, she is careful to highlight the importance of adjusting generic policy models, strategies, and assumptions to local, contextual, and cultural differences, and to make allowance for adaptation, mediation, and negotiation. Indeed, the founder of the BCC had declared that the institution was neither to be a transplant from the United States nor a hybrid between a university and a secondary school. That search for something different and contextually relevant would pay dividends as the institution steadied itself in the turbulent waters of increasing homogenization and the uncritical international transfer of strategies and policies that were so prevalent at the time. The Barbados Community College has been branded as the pioneer who led the Anglophone Caribbean in a global movement, a movement which is trying to respond to a growing increase in social demand for tertiary education as the gross enrollment rate at the secondary level grew. The global tertiary sector has been characterized as reflecting three stages of development. There was the elite stage, preparing students for roles in government and the learned professions. The mass stage, providing the leading strata of the technical and economic organizations. And the universal access stage, preparing large numbers of peoples for life in advanced societies. It was the mass stage that spurred the emergence of the community college model. Professor Roberts scoured the globe for parallels. She took us on a whirlwind tour to the Americas, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Oceania, and the Antipodes in New Zealand, Australia, giving us a bird's eye view of what obtained in each locality. What took root in Barbados in the post-independence era was a fusion of these models, to which was added the distinctive local element, inspired as much by the need to enhance the island's human resource capacity as by the aspirations and dreams of a people known for punching above its weight, as Professor Roberts puts it. The Caribbean Community College movement took on a momentum of its own, a subset of the broader global movement, a model of South-South collaboration. These institutions that have emerged are as varied as the Caribbean landscape itself, but they have all kept the core principle articulated by Errol Miller with his adopting a global perspective while operating at a local level, by the late UWI Vice Chancellor, Honorable Rex Netterford, who speaks to the region's inward reach but outward stretch, and by Professor Roberts herself, who summarizes the strategy of thinking globally, networking regionally, and acting locally. The model pioneered by the Barbados Community College is a fusion of something old, something borrowed, something new. And I know that the reference to the nuptial tradition is not lost on the reader, as you are given insights into partnerships, alliances, and twinning arrangements. However, the publication is to be seen not only as a historical documentation of the development of the Barbados Community College and the Caribbean Community College movement, but also as a contribution to the growing body of literature in the comparative education tradition and in the administration, planning, and provision of tertiary education in small states in the context of globalization. The most enduring tenet of the comparative education tradition has been the significance of context and the study of difference. Indeed, the phrase context matters was one of the mantras of Professor Michael Crossley, who was a professor of comparative education at the University of Bristol, where I studied, while Caribbean educator Dr. Didicus Jules has consistently advanced the concept of differentiation in a globalized context. Innovative planning for tertiary education in small states represents both a strategic investment in scarce human resources and a strengthening of their capacity for critical international engagement. There is therefore much that can be learned from the Barbados Community College Experience and the Caribbean Community College model, which can infuse the formulation and implementation of international educational policy and practice. One could not be very far wrong in arguing that the Caribbean region has been underrepresented in comparative education studies, in spite of the call for greater attention to be given to the particular circumstances of small states. It has been argued that the field of education in these small states can benefit from more in-depth and comparative case studies of individual institutions and systems that are well grounded in context. That call was made by the English comparativist, the late Colin Brock, who, in arguing the challenges of smallness of scale, observed that whatever the eventual answers to the problems of educational provision in small states might be, they will most likely be found if there is much more research and in-depth case studies of individual institutions, as well as comparative analyses across the wide range of small states. The Barbados Community College Experience is a useful example of that type of study. Professor Roberts has taken the lead in narrowing the underrepresentation gap and bringing the history of the development of the BCC to the domestic, regional, and global reader and educational planner. But pioneers need followers to make their efforts count. The Caribbean's contribution and its successes in the democratization of tertiary education need to inform the global discourse. And really, we cannot afford to wait to celebrate the 50th anniversary of our individual and national institutions to populate the global knowledge pool. This 368-page publication, from preface to index, is extremely well researched and presented. Its tables, figures, photographs, appendices, and references, not to mention, of course, the analysis itself, is a veritable treasure trove, not only for the Barbadian national, who would be familiar with names and faces and places, with the struggles and the triumphs, the missteps and the sure-footedness of the journey, but also for the present day researcher, educational planner, and administrator who will be spared the daunting and tedious task of prospecting that gold mine of irreplaceable historical data from paper files scattered far and wide. This project must indeed have been, for Professor Vivienne Roberts, a labor of love. I thank you.
And Dame Perlette, we thank you for your succinct and insightful review of the publication which we celebrate today. Thank you once again. The author of the book, Professor Vivienne Roberts, joined the Barbados Community College in 1975 as the first assistant tutor in the newly established Division of Health Sciences. She became senior tutor in that division and got to know Sir Lloyd much better during the period 1976 to 1986, as they worked on the ongoing development of a very dynamic division and exchanged views on the associate degree. Although she left BCC for the University of the West Indies in 1991, she has maintained strong links with the college and with Sir Lloyd. Professor Roberts served as Deputy Principal of the UB Open Campus from 2008 to 2014 and was conferred with the title of Professor Emerita on her retirement. I invite Professor Roberts to share some remarks about the college and about the publication. Professor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. COVID-19 has really changed the way we live and work. So much so that in these days, virtual book launches are becoming the norm. Some of us are happy with this because friends can join us from across the globe. Others are pleased because they can quietly nod off unseen during the last presentation. Be assured, though, that during this one, I will be watching you. You may find the topic something old, something borrowed, something new, a little puzzling. This is a good time, therefore, for me to put at ease the minds of the romantics, the artists, and the erudite, and admit that hidden in this phrase, there is no magic, no mystery, no complex meaning, but rather a simple depiction of an ongoing reality. After more than 50 years, one may still wonder how the Barbados Community College came to be. Was it imposed from above? Was it imported from abroad? Did it emerge organically from below? Was it borrowed from the United States? Others may ask, why write about the Barbados Community College? And I could give 100 reasons. However, today's response is simple. When there's an important story to tell, if everyone looks to someone else, it just would not get done. In light of this unsolicited explanation, I trust that the college's historians, including Mr. Trevor Marshall, will understand my impatience and overlook my trespass into their territory. At the outset, I must confess that there are a few aspects of this book which I am particularly pleased. For example, the collection of photographs of relevant old, abandoned, or even demolished buildings, such as the Harbour Site, Sherborne House, Marine House, the Erie, and the Tercentenary School of Nursing. Then there are the photographs and lists of all past board chairs, principals, deputy principals, registrars, and senior tutors. Lists, albeit incomplete, of past guild presidents, Barbados Colours and Exhibition winners, Joyce Daniels' painting on the front cover of the book, and the engaging stories told by former staff members. Let me share also 4 interesting discoveries. First, Mr. Colin Curtin, then education officer and later chairman of the board, was actually the first and only interim principal of the college in 1968. Second, there was a division of community services, which was short-lived. Third, of the 19 first assistant tutors, to the best of my knowledge, only 6 are still alive. Adele Lynch, Ann Hewitt, Edgar Manifold, Hubert Bino, Lucine Bishop, and Marcina Williams, formerly Haynes. Fourth, in the first 46 years of the college's existence, there were 5 principals. And in the past 6 years, 5 persons have occupied that chair. I take this opportunity to thank the numerous persons who provided information and support for this book. The BCC for providing access to its resources, the UWI Press for publishing the book, and all of you for your role in making this virtual book launch possible. The Barbados Community College Experience, Leading the Anglophone Caribbean in a Global Movement, was published in 2020. However, the research and writing were conducted over several years. Although the focus of the book is local, the college's evolution is presented both in a regional as well as a global context. Over the next few minutes, I am offering just the appetizer to induce you to enjoy the main course, the book itself. A community college was established in Barbados in July 1968, and it admitted its first students in January 1969. Barbados had become independent from Britain in 1966 and was urgently in need of greater numbers of middle-level managers and skilled workers, many more and a wider variety than the local hotel school, technical institute, and extramural department of UWI could supply. The then 20-year-old University of the West Indies, including the 2-year-old Cave Hill campus, was expected to continue to educate and train primarily professionals, leaders, and top managers. In reality, though, many students were successfully completing fifth forms in the secondary schools, and the demand for higher education and training was urgent and growing. The Minister of Education of Barbados at that time saw the need for local adaptation of the familiar British educational system. Against a very strong current of political and public opposition to an advanced level college, the minister had to defend his idea. There was all-round ambivalence about what the institution would be and could do. However, its advocate, Erskine Lloyd Sandiford, now Sir Lloyd, was equally clear about its major purpose, a dual function of post-secondary education for transfer to university, as well as a means of addressing manpower development for the workplace. It took a few years for Barbados to translate the community college concept into reality. Initially, the new principal of the college, Clyde Best, better known as Charlie Best, visited 11 community colleges in the United States to gain first-hand experience. Additionally, mentoring of the fledgling college was offered by Penn State University in the United States and also by the University of the West Indies. About a decade later, new developments emerged from a prolonged symbiotic relationship between the St. Clair College of Applied Arts and Technology in Ontario, Canada, and the Barbados Community College. By then, similar colleges were emerging on other Caribbean islands, and global counterparts were being established on every continent. In relation to educational institutions, many countries have had something old in the form of universities, post-secondary specialist institutions, and secondary schools, some also offering technical education. However, commencing in the 1960s, technical vocational education reform experienced a boost. The global trend was the development of community college counterparts. Old institutions were reformed and new institutions created. These new emerging institutions were not necessarily called community colleges, but many reflected the features and ethos of the US Community College. Barbados Community College was the first in this region. However, since then, the community college or some related entity has existed or still exists in 18 Caribbean countries. You may wish to consult the book to find out more about those institutions. Caribbean community colleges vary in their origins, governance arrangements, funding, and levels of offerings. However, they are united in their public ownership or support, commitment to access, affordability, comprehensiveness, and flexibility in programming. They focus on teaching over research, as well as responsiveness to the needs of their communities and students. In 1968, after much what Bajans call bassa bassa by the government of the day, the teachers' union, and even the public, the BCC came into being. For further details on the bassa bassa, consult the main course, the book itself. Of course, the words community college in the name signaled links with, and some may say borrowing from, the United States. In addition, although this was a new institution, it was temporarily housed in old buildings, the refurbished Sherborne House and the formerly repurposed harbour site vacated by the University of the West Indies. From the outset then, the college embodied something old, something borrowed, something new. The Barbados Community College offered educational access to many students for whom places would not normally have been found in the sixth form schools, creating a more educationally diverse student body in both day and evening classes. Arthur Seeley, a former senior tutor of liberal arts, acted as principal from 1976 to 1978 and presided over the official opening of the new facility at the Erie campus by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The decade 1978 to 1988, with Alvin Barnett as principal and Dr. Leonard Shorey as board chair, was transformational and impactful. Growth was evident in student enrollment, staffing, program expansion, course development, and delivery. The college was now performing its full range of functions: transfer, vocational, remedial, adult and continuing education, and community service. Student performance improved. Graduates were being placed in critical positions of need. There was greater liaison with the community. Past BCC staff were serving at the highest level of government: Erskine Sandiford as Prime Minister, Richard Bye as Chairman of the House Committee, and John Jordan as Senator. Looking back after the first 2 decades, at his own as well as Alvin Barnett's tenure, former Principal Clyde Best wrote in the New Bajan, and I quote, "On the evidence of the first 20 years of growth and development of the Barbados Community College, it is safe to predict that historians of education will not only find its achievements interesting and satisfying, but will also view the college as a radiant star in the Barbados educational firmament." Over these first 2 decades, BCC has demonstrated that it is neither a patch on the threadbare areas of an older system which turned out large numbers of failures, nor the fabrication of an extravagant dream, end of quote. Then for the next 16 years came Principal Norma Holder and board chairs Colin Curtin, Dr. Trevor Hassel, and Lalita Applewhite. The college reached the age of maturity. It had outgrown the validation provided by the British external examinations and asserted its ability to design, deliver, evaluate, and certify its own offerings. The government of Barbados enabled this through legislation to grant national scholarships and exhibitions based on student performance in associate degree programs. Many BCC students achieved the standard set, perhaps too many, according to public opinion. This led to some public disquiet and consequent revision of the criteria for such awards, resulting in fewer annual awards. Nonetheless, emboldened by experience, the college confidently offered its first 2 bachelor's degrees. Students won prizes in sport, language competitions, and academics. Many were recognized for their contribution to society. Several showed off their talents in the portfolio programs of the Fine Arts Division, their culinary skills in the Hospitality Institute, and their cultural talents in the college's Communifesta. Coming after a period of excitement, maturity, and optimism, the next decade reflected constraint and uncertainty. Dr. Gladstone Best envisaged a vibrant industry services unit, imminent registration with the Barbados Accreditation Council, additional bachelor's degree programs, the naming of buildings in honor of past principals, and progress towards the establishment of the University College of Barbados. Under his watch and that of board chairs Dr. Asquith Thompson, Desmond Critchlow, Bertram Carter, and Stephen Broom, the reality was somewhat different. However, several new programs and articulation arrangements were introduced. The Barbados Language Center was officially opened, and an honorary doctorate was conferred on Sir Lloyd Sandiford. The Barbados Community College continued to be a gateway of opportunity for its students and staff, and there's hardly a better example of this than the homegrown Dr. Best himself. His 42-year journey was that of a student, teacher, moving up from a bachelor's degree to a PhD, and a career spanning assistant tutor to principal. Following that stint, Mr. Lindsay Waterman acted as principal for 6 months. During Dr. Ian Austin's brief tenure, the college was registered in 2017 by the Barbados Accreditation Council. Dr. Cheryl Weeks, former senior tutor in health sciences and newly appointed deputy principal, acted as principal from 2018 to 2019. Former tutor in the Division of Science, Ms. Annette Ali, was appointed as principal of the college in 2019. Reflecting holistically on its first 50 years, one continues to see in the BCC the old, the borrowed, and the new. As indicated earlier, its very name suggests the borrowing of an idea and construct from the United States. Nevertheless, the early divisions had elements of the old in the form of externally driven British curricula and examinations. The Division of Health Sciences inherited apprenticeship-style allied health programs, which had been fashioned in the old British way. Additionally, the division borrowed from and exchanged ideas with training institutions in many Caribbean countries. It was also impacted by the universities of the West Indies and Guyana, as well as by both the College of Arts, Science and Technology and the West Indies School of Public Health in Jamaica. It is not widely known that in its first decade, curriculum development and program delivery in the Division of Health Sciences were under the direct influence of American volunteers drawn from colleges, universities, and other institutions, an arrangement with the Project Hope Foundation. The college's development of joint programs with Eardiston Teachers College and the then Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic was a new venture, as was the launch of a homegrown paralegal program and certificate in business studies, nurtured by local professionals and approved by the University of the West Indies. The delivery of the UWI preliminary science program at the BCC also reflected the university's local influence on and confidence in the college. Perhaps the most significant transplant from the US Community College, though, was the associate degree, introduced by Sir Lloyd and launched in 1987. However, consideration for relevance within the region inspired local adaptation and reflected institutional innovation and creativity. The twinning of the Barbados Community College with St. Clair College of Applied Arts and Technology reflected borrowing from Canada and resulted in new curricula for the newly established Hospitality Institute, central computerized administrative services for the college, and the establishment of a division of computer studies. In 1981, the old division of liberal arts was transformed as it gave birth to a new related entity, the Barbados Language Center, which grew out of the aspiration of having Spanish as a second language in Barbados. Going beyond that, the center linked the college with the world. The Barbados Community College was able to lend advice and assistance at the time of the establishment of Excelsior Community College in Jamaica in 1974, Sir Arthur Lewis Community College in St. Lucia in 1984, and Grenada National College in 1988. The Division of Hospitality Studies evolved into the Hospitality Institute, which brokered new articulation arrangements and student exchanges with US and UK institutions and influenced similar institutions in the Caribbean region. The nursing department began a new series of international partnerships in the form of attachments for visiting students from the United States and the wider Caribbean. The Division of Fine Arts gained new confidence and greater local visibility from its bachelor's degree status, and students began to display their skills in fashion design and graphic arts in portfolio shows. It was not long after that it was also asserting itself as a new center of excellence in music and the performing arts, a sample of which is on display today. In its strategic plan of 1995, the Barbados Community College signaled its intention to explore a new institutional type, the University College. In 2001, the BCC Board and the Ministry of Education agreed on that strategic direction for Barbados. However, regionally, It was the Cayman Islands that made the bold step. In examining the emergence and development of Caribbean community colleges, it is fair to conclude that the leadership of the Barbados Community College has been evident. However, it took place within the framework of a larger and parallel global movement, which was also being experienced throughout the region. Over the next 50 years, in the context of an ever-changing global, regional, and local environment, the Barbados Community College is poised to create a legacy as an important global player, leading and following, borrowing and lending, as it continues to selectively adopt, adapt, exchange, and reinvent itself, thinking globally, networking regionally, and acting locally. In closing, I hope that this work will be continued and that others will write their own stories. As we view on the screen, Orica's 2001 vision of the Erie campus, including the restored Erie House, let us take a leap to BCC's centennial in 2068. Reimagine the college and dream a little. Would it not be wonderful if that generation too could have reason to celebrate and observe in a realized vision something old, something borrowed, something new? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Roberts, and congratulations on the publication of the Barbados Community College Experience. We'll have a final musical selection from the BCC. Kristen K.B. Sharp Broom is a second-year music student and professional musician. He wrote, performed, and produced Rose Hill's Farewell, a tribute to the late Prime Minister of Barbados, the Right Honorable Owen Arthur. The production includes work by Darren Messiah, a music graduate and BCC tutor, as well as Damien Neblett, another music graduate. Kristen credits not just his music classes, but English and communication and Caribbean art and culture classes for giving him the research skills needed for creating the content of the video. Ladies and gentlemen, Kristen Broom and friends with Rose Hill's Farewell.
Listen, I hear so from yesterday. Yesterday evening, somebody called up and tell us, but there where we see Jordan, not here across road. And Jordan come and stop. And we said, Jordan.
1949, divine light was shone, and the mother gave birth to a child, future be known, cause this young prince would elevate to fame. On Rose Hill, St. Peter would never be the same. Beloved couple strolling through Spikestone roads, Frank and Doll Arthur sowing the seed for us to grow. Now my flow can embrace your words like Psalms. Barbados cannot settle for bronze. From the pasture to all saints, from CP to 8C, graduate from UE on to Mona University. How we integrated in the midst of that diversity. By 76, working with Michael Manley. 81, it was back home, the grind. Tom Adams was in power, it was that kind of time. 84, another claim, as a down-to-earth speaker won the House Assembly, representative for St. Peter. 86 elections, BLP leader was Bree. Barbados would swing B, or in Arthur retained his seat. 93, he became party leader for the B. First victory 94, and held it for 2 terms more. A father to bend but touch nations, name a true champion of Caribbean integration with an academia, his weapons and arms. Barbados cannot settle for bronze. Humble beginnings as the village barber. Came a sharp economist plus a good cook, a loving father. confident tone, energy to inspire. Would always encourage young people to reach higher. Reaching us all, committed to the poor. Brought the economic golden years to BIM for sure. For me, it's not a B thing or a D thing, it's a vision thing. Lift up a great king. What did he teach us? Never stop striving. What did you teach us? Never stop climbing. Be with us in spirit, it's sad that you're gone. I mean, we never settle for bronze.
And I believe I give this house the assurance that I leave fulfilled, feeling that I have done my duty to my people as God has given me the light to see that duty. Farewell.
Thank you very much, Kristen Broom and friends. A moving tribute indeed. The creativity of the BCC students and graduates is on full display in that video. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this afternoon's proceedings. Thank you all very much for participating in this virtual book launch. We hope that you found it interesting and inspiring. Copies of the Barbados Community College Experience are available from the following sources: the publisher, uepress.com, the distributor, Longleaf Services, the principal's office at the Barbados Community College, amazon.com, Kingston Bookshop Limited, Jamaica, Book Fusion, and Cognella. Wholesalers in North America are Baker and Taylor, Ingram's, Yankee Book Peddlers, and Barnes & Noble. Happy reading and good evening.